Turns out the old man was in the shitter. And he's like, after the fact, my mom's so pissed because finally she grabbed the best man and said, just dance with me. So my mom's first dance was with the best man because they couldn't find my dad, who was taking a dump at his own wedding.
You're listening to Let Me Speak to a Manager with Frank Cava and Ian Matthews.
What a crock of shit.
Yeah, that was hot mic, Sam.
It's 30 minutes away. I'll be there in 10.
Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
Frankie!
Ian, you son of a bitch.
Look at Frankie with his Dodgers hat. You front-running son of a bitch, you. Look at you.
Correct.
Frank wants to show off. He's signaling to everyone how cool he is that he went to Dodger Stadium last week.
It was great. I am a Red Sox fan and a Dodger fan. The Red Sox are so terrible. There's no chance I'll be in the World Series anytime soon. So I feel like I can have American League and National League allegiances. I said that same thing. Like, when are the Marlins and the Red Sox ever going to play? And 2 years later, it was interleague. And but you can't root for the Marlins anymore.
What? Where would you rank between Fenway and Dodger Stadium? You got to pick one stadium.
I will throw in Wrigley. And to me, those are your three best stadiums in baseball. I was also like right around the corner from McCovey Cove in San Francisco for a few days, staying in a hotel right there. I got to walk there. I like walked in a little bit and saw that place. That place is sick, but it's also newer. I mean, it's 20 years old roughly. It's an awesome stadium, but I don't know. To me, those three are just amazing. Like, there's no way you can go wrong in any of those three. The one thing LA has going for it that the other two don't, it's in Los Angeles. It's
75 degrees, sunny, no
staring
humidity.
at mountains. It's amazing.
Wrigley Field, you have an 80% chance of wearing a beanie, hat, and gloves. Like 65% of their games are cold. So I'm going Dodger Stadium. I absolutely love that joint.
It's amazing. It's so good.
It's the best. I'm jealous you got to go. It sounded awesome.
So all right, I'll tell you a funny story. So I took my whole family out to vacation, and my wife and I with our two kids. Our kids are 6 and 4. And my wife had seen a comedy skit, which is just hysterical. So the comedy skit is, you don't go on vacation with your family. You go on a family trip. It's not vacation. It's different. It's a job. So we're going to talk about today is intrinsic versus extrinsic motivators. And we're going to talk about, like, do you do it for the love of the thing, or do you do it because you must do it, or like, what is it, right? So the day we went to the Dodgers game, we took our kids to the Dodgers game. We left. We did roller coasters and a bunch in Santa Monica. So like right on the pier, it's like where Forrest Gump ran, and it was like the Santa Monica pier. It was awesome. But we were getting all hungry, and when you go out with a 6 and a 4-year-old, there's two things to do. They dominate the dinner experience, or you bring your iPad and they sit and stare at it. And they stare at it to a point where they don't look up at anybody else. And we call it the digital babysitter. So this is where the story gets interesting. There's a table to our right. Ellie and I are sitting there having a couple of cocktails, enjoying quiet for the first time in days, because we don't let them watch a lot of TV. But when we're on vacation, we let them watch TV at dinner. This old lady sitting next to us has got to be 20 minutes short of death. And she's staring at our kids, and she keeps pointing, and she's doing it for like 10 minutes. And like at one point, I just looked up there and I said, "Stop judging my children." And everybody just stops and looks at me. And Ellie's like kicking me under the table at my knee. And the lady goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry. My kids are older and grown." I said, "You're not sorry. You're judging our kids, and you just got caught. You're sorry you got caught. If you want to talk about our kids, make us part of the conversation. Otherwise, pick a different topic."
Oh, that is friggin' awesome. I love that. Good for you, dude, that you did that.
It felt good, but I do feel kind of bad that I picked on like an 80-year-old lady.
Yeah, well, the upside of that is you can't get your ass kicked for lipping off to an 80-year-old lady.
The hand over the face and pointing, and it was going on long enough. I was just like, enough.
Yeah, and you're already you're already on just a thin line anyway from being on your family trip where you're on edge the whole time. You mess with someone on edge. She got what
I have intrinsic motivation to be a good daddy, but
she had that coming to her. She had that coming to her. There's no doubt. So we started talking about baseball, but the kind of capstone video that we're going to share this week for this topic is one of Scotty Scheffler. So Scotty Scheffler, for those that don't follow golf, is the greatest golfer on the planet right now. And he's not quite Tiger Woods, but at his pace, he's starting to draw serious comparisons. So he's 29 years old and he now has 4 major victories. And he just won the Open, which formerly known as the British Open in Ireland, which hell of a course, very hard course to win. But through this point in his career, 29 years old and in this many matches, Scheffler has a 22% win rate. Tiger Woods was at like 24%. Now, Tiger was a little more dominant in some of his matches, so he was a little more explosive and he spent a little more time at number 1. But in essence, when you get compared with Tiger Woods at 29 years old, you're doing something, because I think
that's
Frank
right.
and I would both tell you we didn't think we'd ever see anything like that the rest of our life. And
correct.
Scotty's starting to draw comparisons. So hell of a golfer. But what got us talking this week is Scotty, prior to the Sunday match where he won the event, some reporter asked him how much it would mean to him to win the Open and how important is victory. And I think Scotty kind of shocked most of the sports world in his response, and we're going to just go ahead and play it and let you listen.
I'm not here to inspire somebody else to be the best player in the world, because what's the point? This is not a fulfilling life. It's fulfilling from the sense of accomplishment, but it's not fulfilling from a sense of like the deepest, places of your heart. There's a lot of people that make it to what they thought was going to fulfill them in life. And then you get there and all of a sudden you get to number 1 in the world. And then they're like, what's the point? And, I really do believe that, because, what is the point? Like, why do I want to win this tournament so bad? That's something that I wrestle with on a daily basis. It's like showing up at the Masters every year. It's like, why do I want to win this golf tournament so badly? Why do I want to win the Open Championship so badly? I don't know, because if I win, it's going to be awesome for about 2 minutes. And then we're going to get to the next week and it's going to be like, hey, you won 2 majors this year. How important is it for you to win the FedEx Cup playoffs? And it's just like, we're back here again, So we really do. We work so hard for such little moments. And, I'm kind of a sicko. I love putting in the work. I love being able to practice. I love getting out to live out my dreams. But at the end of the day, sometimes I just don't understand the point, because I don't know if I'm making any sense or not, but am I not? It's just one of those deals. I love the challenge. I love being able to play this game for a living. It's one of the greatest joys of my life, but does it fill the deepest, wants and desires of my heart? Absolutely not.
So this makes me think of something we haven't talked about that I want to say real quick. So Tony Robbins has a series of tapes, the stuff that he recorded in the 80s. And it was what you used to listen to if you wanted to listen to Tony Robbins. It was like the Date with Destiny or like the 7 Days, like all these different things, right? So in 2000, I went and listened to him for the first time. And I bought some of his tapes and I would listen to him. And he tells a story in there about you got to have something that fulfills you, and you have to have something bigger than maybe what it is that you do every day. And what he used to talk about was the guys that walked on the moon. And what he said is how hollow it was for all of them after they walked on the moon. And he says it in a really funny way. He's like, you walked on the moon. So like, if you don't have something else inside of you besides I have to get that one thing, it becomes very problematic over time. And what Scheffler said, we edited it. We didn't get to this. He talks about, well, after your 2 minutes celebration, we'll talk about where we want to go to eat. A critical part of any conversation is where we could eat some dinner. But in addition to that, the thing that he said that I loved was how he loves the process, putting in the work. This is a joy of my life, but it's not the winning that's the joy of his life. It's that he gets to play golf, and that is a job, but he loves it. So there, I don't know, some takeaways real quick before we kind of get into the meat.
I love, he says, I'm a sicko. I
Yep.
love the work. I love putting in the work. The the reason why landing on the moon was a depressing moment for Buzz Aldrin in particular has said that many times is it was a realization that
I've
I'm
peaked.
not going to do this again. There's nothing to train for, right? So Scotty, after he wins a tournament, can go practice the next day. Like that it's the work he loves. It's the trying to hone his craft. With the astronauts, mission accomplished. It was over. There was no next mission to train for. That was what they were trying to do, land on the moon, win, get there first. There were other things, but it was all public relations. It became a different job that wasn't as fun afterward. And so I think it was a little shocking to some people, but one thing that Frank and I talked about, if you've ever been in sales, if you've ever been a commission salesperson, this is so relatable. It's not about, if everything is about getting the sale, if everything is about closing the sale is actually sort of depressing. The fun of sales and salespeople that make it 30, 40 years, Frankie, and you've worked with some really good ones for a long time. The ones I know that have made it a long time, God, they love the chase. They love the chase. They love the cat and mouse. They love hearing no. They love the creativity it takes, the overcoming of objections. They love the variety of customers that they get to go after. They look at the chase every bit as fun as the sale. And because if you don't, it's a depressing gig when every time you make a big month or a big quarter, someone's immediately saying, "What are you going to do next month?" Well, if you love the chase, you're like, I'm probably going to do more because I got all these prospects I'm working with that I've been going after.
So one of the things my wife and I talk about all the time, we talk about with our kids, and maybe we talk about it because we weren't on this list, but you don't want to peak too early, right? So like I think about like the prettiest girl in high school or the most likely to succeed or the person who's like the class clown or the funniest.
The 12-year-old in Little League throwing 70 miles an hour that is still throwing 70 5 years later.
Right. Or like you play football and you get beat up by kids that went through puberty 4 years before you did. That had nothing to do with anything other than just how they grew.
Yeah.
Right. So there's nothing there. And it's like what I would argue is this: there's a way to be a phenom, but it's rare to be a phenom. You can splash as a phenom, but if you want to have, there's the phenoms, there's the people who are the grinders, and then there's the people who are the grinders that are also phenoms, and those are the ones who become legends. So most of us are not legends, even Ian in his own mind is a legend. However, like history will tell, but we all love him. But what most of us
you've not spent enough time in Trenton, Michigan, where my feats are legendary and still told in lore.
Yeah, I share the mic with Paul Bunyan here. However, the thing that's really interesting about all this for most of us is you got to fall in love with something. And most of us are never going to the moon. Most of us are never going to win a green jacket or a claret jug. So what it is that I think is really interesting with all of this is like, what is it that you fall in love with? And there's a really hokey saying that people say, but it's like you find a job you love and you never go to work a day in your life. That's the relatable part of this. So what I found so interesting about the press conference is this. First of all, Scotty Scheffler was wearing a Nike shirt that was actually made of cashmere. So he's clearly sponsored by them and has access to stuff the rest of us don't. That was one. But the press corps was stunned. Like, someone's this honest? Like, Tiger Woods was maniacal in his chase. And ultimately, it drove him to a premature. He flamed out. He got into other things. He got into other things. He wasn't balanced. What I loved about what Scotty Scheffler said was two really important things. He loves all of it, and he realizes how incredibly grateful that whole thing is. And it's just part of a construct of everything else. And he said, I hope I'm making sense. He's 29. Anybody who's older than 29, like at our age, we know that because we've all thought it. But like the press was like so incredibly just taken aback by how honest he was. Like, is this really a professional golfer saying this out loud? Like I would imagine there's going to be a different group of sponsors that come up to Scotty Scheffler and lean into this because he's being real.
I like that you brought that up because we started talking about Tiger Woods. From a very young age, people anointed Tiger Woods as the next Jack Nicklaus and potentially the greatest golfer in history. And he won so much so early that very early in his career, people were talking about Jack's 18 majors.
Yep.
And it wasn't even, will Tiger get to 18? When? How quickly can he do it? Can he do it before he's 30? Can he do it before he's 35? Can he? And I almost feel like Tiger's whole career was built on extrinsic motivation. Everything was so tied to the number of major victories that Tiger sort of lived an unhealthy life. It was a little unhinged. It was the way he trained was a little unhinged. The way he lived his life, the way he blew off steam. He was never really satisfied. There was nothing, everything was so much about a number that I don't know that he ever slowed down and enjoyed the game the way Scotty sits and talks about, I love going to work. I love getting up early in the morning and practicing. It wasn't, I love the majors and I need to get the majors. He loves to compete, but he loved the process more. And you see, he's living a pretty balanced life. He goes on to talk about how he would much rather be known as a good dad and a good husband than a good golfer. And if anyone ever starts calling him a better golfer than a dad or a husband, he'll quit because there's a lot more health to the way he's talking about his process than I feel there ever was with Tiger, who was obsessed with winning. Scotty seems competitive, but he doesn't seem obsessed to an unhealthy point. He's obsessed with the process and getting better and practicing and working at it.
I think there's something else at play here that we didn't talk about, but I think it just kind of hit me and I want to bring it up. You ever listen to old press clippings or old videos or old TV clips? Like you can look at sports figures, you can John F. Kennedy comes to mind, or FDR. And when they open their mouth, they just sound different. Their accent is a little bit different. The words they choose and how they say things is just different. Can you relate to that? I'm the luckiest guy on the earth when Lou Gehrig broke the record and then ultimately retired, right? They don't sound like they're from this era. And what I think now is Tiger's basically 12 months younger than me. He's 50. Scotty Scheffler's a different generation. And I think that different generation grew up differently than we did. And I think what he looks at, he's like, look, he grew up, he's 30 or 20 years younger. I think it's also a generational thing. We don't produce people like FDR or John F. Kennedy or Lou Gehrig anymore. We produce different kind of people. And I don't think we produce Tiger Woods anymore because we're at a different place in our society. At least we don't in the sports that we follow. I would imagine if you look at places where poverty is still pretty big, or you're immigrating and you're growing up, Tiger was breaking into a whole new thing. And I think it had to be extrinsic because he was a black Asian playing a white man's sport. Scotty Scheffler looks like he was born in the cafeteria of a country club. He's got a gut. He's balding. He looks like oafish. He looks like he belongs at a country club, and clearly he does by his record. So I think it also is it's societal. There's a bunch of things at play here that come out, and you can see that. And I would imagine he grew up not desperate for this. He was always a talented kid that I don't know his backstory, but that would be the thing that I would look at. It wasn't desperation like it was for Tiger.
In one of my courses that I do, Frankie, we talk about when you're coaching someone, you have to know the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. And you have to have some balance, right? You can't say, well, it's all intrinsic. But a story that I always tell in that class, the first time I can ever remember making money, I was in fourth grade. And I had just shoveled snow and there was a ton of it. It was a big one, big enough where in Michigan, we didn't go to school that day, right? Which is saying something.
Right.
So I shoveled my whole driveway and I'm sweating my chubby little fourth grade ass off. And Mrs. Dane comes out. Mrs. Dane was, she was a widow. And so she lived alone, and she was our next door neighbor. And she said, "Hey, could you shovel my driveway? I'll give you $10." And I was like, $10? Yeah, I'm in. Right. So I shoveled her driveway, and she brought me out some hot cocoa and $10. And I was like, this is great. And as I'm walking back to my house, Renzi's across the street hollered over to me, "Hey, do you want to do ours?" And I was like, yeah. So I ran out there. Right. And I did that driveway, and now I go to the house. Now I'm like, I'm on fire. I got $20 in my pocket. I've never made money before. So I'm like, well, shit, I'm feeling myself. I went to the house next door. Right. And I knock on the door, and I say, "Do you want me to do your driveway? I just did these two." And they're like, "Yeah, how much?" I'm like, $10. So I do this, and I end up doing like 5 driveways that day. I make $50. And back then that was like 2 Nintendo cartridges. It was a big deal.
1985, $50 is a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. It was two Nintendo games. So I was like so pumped. And really, it wasn't so much like, for me, I'm doing work for money. It wasn't so much how much money I was getting paid. It was like, this is new and it's interesting. So I go to school the next day, and I can't wait to tell my best friend, Mike Cullen, about my day. Like, and before I can do it, he tells me he made $100. And I'm like, "You made $100? Like, how?" One, he was charging 20, right? So he did 5 houses for 20. So he made 100. And I'm like, he's like, "How much did you make?" I'm like, "I only charged 10. And he started laughing at me. "You only made $50. You did the same amount of work as me." And I immediately felt lousy about something that I had just felt amazing about seconds ago. Like, him laughing at me, I remember just being so pissed. So fast forward to the next snow day.
I love that story.
Yeah, next snow day comes up, and we know about this one. This is going to be a massive blizzard. We know it's coming in. So I am ready. I'm like, this
Carbon up. You like carbo loaded the night before, pizza and pasta. Were you ready to go?
I'm ready, Frankie. I'm like, I know what to do this time. I'm going to ask for more money, and I'm also going to get up earlier. And so I get up real early, and I had already gone to a few houses and said, if it snows, right? I'd gone to the Danes and the Renzi's before and said, if it snows, do you want me to do your driveway again? And I say it's $20. Like, I kind of like do one of these, and they don't flinch. They're like, sure, whatever. It's going to be a lot of snow. So that day though, I just didn't quit. Like, the one day I just quit because my hands hurt. I was sweating my ass off, and 5 was enough. I couldn't believe how much. This time I was up when the sun came up, and I remember I went all day. Like, I had blisters on my hands. I was just drenched. I went around the whole neighborhood, and I didn't tell Cullen any of this, that I was planning to do this. And I remember the next day I went in, and it was like some crazy number. I had like, $200 or something I made. It's all I did all day. And I waited for him to tell me this time how much he made, and it was like 100 again. And this time I made 200, but it wasn't the money. All I could think of all day was Cullen. All I could think of was, I'm going to beat Cullen. I'm going to make more money than him. It had nothing to do with how many Nintendo games I was getting. Intrinsically, my inspiration the second day came from beating a friend, from talking a little smack, to the competition. It was the process for me. And it was kind of my first glimpse into intrinsic versus extrinsic. If I'd have done it because my dad said you need to go make some money, that would have been extrinsic. I was told to do it. I was doing this because I wanted to, and it made me more aggressive in asking for more money. It made me more aggressive in knocking on more doors, in staying later than I did the first time. I was driven by something much deeper than just the actual money or the Nintendo games that I could get.
So by every measure of success, I've made it, right? Like, you and I have had this conversation when you quit NVR. Like, you called Inman up and you told him like how much you stood to walk away with. And like, he clearly has more, but he also didn't have the last 25, 30 years of his life the way that you're going to have yours. And there comes a moment where you have to make that decision. What I think has to happen in order for this to be the right thing, like I can't exactly tell you why I love doing what I do, but I know I do. Now, there's parts of it I love more than other parts of it, and I've earned the right to select what it is that I want to spend my time on, and I get to choose how I craft my business or my future. And I've earned that right, and I have the ability to do that, which is a gift. But I think what has to happen in some of these things is there has to be a little bit of a blend. Extrinsic, if you fall in love with stuff that is chasing, extrinsic needs to be a little bit, it needs to become intrinsic. Like the promotion and raise, I don't have a promotion or raise really in front of me. I own a business, but I can feel what those things are. Now, it's an extrinsic motivator, but it is already part of the fabric of who I am. And you have to give yourself something to chase, or it gets really boring. Like in my word, like from where I grew up, I've already landed on the moon. But I like to grow people's careers. I like to impact more families. I like to do other things that are outside of maybe what I started, and those become newer motivators. If you look at sports, which we talk about a lot here, think about your best coaches. They always have somebody who doubts you or doesn't believe in you. So you always have something to chase. We've talked about before, like the rabbit and the dogs. The rabbit has to be in front of the dogs, so the dogs have something to chase. So extrinsic and intrinsic are there. And then how do you utilize those things or manipulate them in a little bit of a way that keeps yourself fresh and moving forward is, I think, the trick.
So extrinsic is salary, pay raises, bonuses, promotions, right? So it could be, status, benefits, contests. Think about like trying to win a contest, short-sighted, right? Perks, and just winning in general, winning.
Yep.
And that can be extrinsic. Intrinsic is purpose, enjoyment, fun, growth, curiosity, getting to use creativity, having passion, self-expression. And for Frank, so before we recorded today, Frank was excitedly, I couldn't get him to stop talking about it, which is cool. I love to hear about it, but Frank is finding a new way to make money with the same lots, right? And without nerding out too much on it, he's looking at how do I get 3 or 4 lots where I used to put 2 houses onto the same 2 lots? How do I split it up in different ways? How do I make different rents on it? And from there, I could raise capital differently in the future. Frank's been doing this for 15 years. What Frank loves is being able to use creativity in ways he couldn't for a big company. So it was a very creative, I was incredibly impressed by it. And at some point I may be investing in some structure he's doing with it, but it was different. It was novel. It was unique. It was something his competition wasn't doing. That's intrinsic motivation. Will there be riches for Frank if he does it well? Will he make money? Yes, there will be some extrinsic motivation to this. He wouldn't be doing this for free. But you can see his eyes light up when we were talking about it. His eyes were lighting up because he gets to use creativity to do some novel things, and it's worth it for him to chase. Is it going to be a delayed response on him? Yeah, of course. He's telling me about this and probably won't make money on it for months, maybe a years to really blow it out. And there's other sections of Frank's business that suck his energy, that are tiring for him. And he's thinking about how do I put less into those sides of the business and more into these that are intrinsically motivating versus some of the sections of his business that, yeah, they make money, but I'm not that motivated to be involved in it. I'm not that passionate about it. That's exciting to me. Like watching you contort and twist your business and go into different areas that are more exciting and start to invest less in the sections that sort of sap your energy and suck you dry of your motivation.
So what I think is really cool about what we just talked about is it's another graduation of things that I'd earned and learned and figured out, and then it's a creative distillation of those things. But for those of us that aren't business owners, or maybe you're listening to this and you're a young manager, the carrot and the stick is real, right? And the intrinsic stuff is the carrot. The extrinsic stuff, I think, is the stick. And the more things that you can turn from stick into carrot, like Scotty Scheffler talked about practicing. Most people think practicing is terrible. He makes it enjoyable. He loves it. He realizes, I don't work at a sweatshop. I don't work at a steel mill. I'm not washing cars. I'm hitting golf balls. Like, that is a really, really unique and fresh perspective on something. Like, one of my worst, like, one of the things I hate to hear, like, every time you see someone win a World Series or a championship, they're like, we just put in so much work. Everyone does. You're a professional athlete. Like, you're all doing the same amount of work. Like, you're like, the CBA is telling you can only work a certain amount, and you're all maximizing it. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with other things, like working as a unit, working as a team, believing in something. It's not the extrinsic stuff. It's the stuff that is the internal stuff that pushes you ahead. Camaraderie, friendship, doing it for others. Like, that's the stuff that, but I people will talk, like, I feel like our words betray us in a lot of ways. And I feel like as Americans, like, if you go back and look at like what a standardized test looked like in the early 1900s, like 1925, it was paragraph answers. And paragraph answers caused you to really need to think and write out an answer. It's harder to grade, it's slower, but classrooms were smaller, population was smaller. Nowadays we have Scantron tests. It's this or that. It's A, B, C, or D. That's it. There's one right answer. Well, that's not how life is. Life is a series of answers or a series of things, and being able to express it in ways, or being able to articulate, like, this is why this means, this is why it has meaning to me, and it can give you fuel.
We had in both big Fortune 500 companies, we had a President's Club trip every year for our top salespeople, both at GE and NVR. And I often got to host, as an executive, you get to host some of these, right? And they'd be in Aruba or Bermuda or whatever, Costa Rica, warm, sunny climates. You do like a 3 or 4 day trip where you could bring a spouse, and it's a way to say thank you to your best people, right? And I used to have a thing I would say every year, Frank, and it was the truth. There at MVR, we let 20 people come on that trip, the top 20 out of whatever, 150, 160. And I would always tell them, look around the room, only 5 of you will be back next year, right? Or I would say, raise your hand if you were at last year's trip, and 5 hands would go up. And I would say, all right now, you're all thinking we're all coming back next year because you're at the top of your game, you're kicking ass, you're making it happen. But the odds are only 5 of you will be back, because the other 100-some people that missed out on this trip are going to work harder. They're going to dig a little deeper. This motivation is going to last. And you are going to get back and think, what's next? Do it again? Extrinsic motivation can get you to do something incredible once. I find that to get there a second time, you need to love it. You need to have more purpose than just being back on this contest trip. And 15 of those 20 would drop out every year because it wasn't enough, and they just didn't keep grinding, and they didn't keep the same process going, because unlike Scotty, who just, I'm a sicko. I love the work. I love to get up at 6 a.m. and go to the range for 3 hours and hit balls. That was more important to him than the wins. What I found with a lot of our President's Club winners, the trip was more important than the process. The trip drove them on a short basis to have a hell of a year, but it wasn't enough for sustaining and going back every year.
I got one of the funniest emails of my career. We decided sales were really, really bad. And this is like 2006, 2007, somewhere in there. And we were trying to give an incentive. We were trying to give realtors a little bit more money to sell one of our units versus somebody else's. So like if standard commission was 3, we're going to pay like 3.5 or 4 or $1,000 bonus. And Rainer Altman was many rungs above all of us at this time. He was an area president. He had a big job. And somehow or another, he learned about this, and he sent me this hysterical email. And he basically said, we find that over the period of time, he basically said extrinsic motivators don't work, but he said it in a different way. He goes, we found things like minks and furs don't really motivate people long term. Like he used money, minks, and furs. Were the
Minks. I like a good mink. I like a
like,
good mink.
it was 20 years ago. I still remember getting that email and laughing my ass off. Like, who's giving out
Minks.
furs? It's fucking August.
What is this? The 1915s? What are we talking about here? What's happening?
I just thought that was incredible.
But you remember even at NVR, you were on the same bonus plan as I was. March 15th was bonus day.
I put that on here. Yeah.
Right? And what happened?
Nothing. You got to check. I asked a guy that I looked up to a lot at the time. Like I was on the outside looking in, and on the outside looking in, I was like, man, it must be nice. You get a, 7-figure check. I was like, I didn't ask, did you get your 7-figure checks? I knew it was in there. I said, what did it feel like to get that check for the first time? He goes, it happened on a Saturday. I was just at work. I didn't even really look at it until a couple of days later. Like, that's not what you're doing it for. It's the reward, but it isn't the chase.
Yeah. But right? Do you remember how many people you would see roll up in the 4th week of March with a new car? And
Exactly.
you'd be like, you're doing it for that. Like all year you waited to get that bonus so you could go spend it as quick as you could. Those weren't the best performers in the company. The ones who did it would do it without the money. Like I was trying to win. I was competitive.
I was out in Napa last week with our friend Lee, and he mentioned somebody to me that we all know. And Lee used to interact with him because I used to work for this guy 15, 20 years ago. And he was one of those guys that always went out and bought the car. Every year there was a new car, or a new pool, or he bought a bagel shop or a muffin. What was it? They did cupcakes, like a restaurant. It was like they bought all this crazy shit with their money. And you could tell like that was the thing. It was the status. I own a restaurant now. I got a new car. I got this. Person still works there. A person that I told you who like didn't care about that first big bonus check has retired and sold businesses like for the last 15 years. It's a different mindset. He wasn't chasing it day over day, and he doesn't chase it now. And I think the falling in love with it piece, I think this is really critical. Some of us don't have the right or the ability or the position or a way to do this. My grandfather, my dad, they were pretty much cast. You're going to go do this. Ian's dad had the ability to go to the steel mill and work. This is before the internet. This is before podcasts. This is before self-help was a genre. So for other people in time, that's all you had. Like you did your thing. And some people, I think people who are moving here, people who are poor, who are helping to pay the mortgage in their 12, like maybe you don't have this chance. But by and large, if you look at it, like what we have is not a right, it's a gift. And if you pick and choose how you spend your time and utilize the right resources, you can get anything you want. And if you chase the right motivators, it can have a lifetime impact on what it is that you're trying to achieve. And I think most of us have that at our fingertips now. And with AI and all the information we have, it's easier than ever, as long as you don't go into debt in college. If you have the right things, you're listening to the right devil on your shoulder.
Yeah. Have you ever read anything, Frankie, by Daniel Pink?
No.
He's got some incredible books, but one of them that I love is Drive.
I read that book.
It's about motivation and mastery, and he also wrote a really good sales book that I like, To Sell is Human. So a little bit of, it's a psychology book too, but in Drive he references a series of studies, and I find it fascinating. So a couple of guys, Edward Deci and Richard Ryan, came up with this theory, the self-determination theory, which they believe kind of dictates what drives our motivation. And they said that to be truly motivated and to motivate people, so if you're a manager and you're trying to manage employees and motivate them, you need 3 things. The 3 things are autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So autonomy. Do I have freedom to do what I do great every day? Right? That's important from a motivational perspective. Am I just told what to do? Think assembly line, think my dad, right, who had to work a crane and he had to keep up with the hot strip mill and take slabs of hot steel and move it, transfer it to a cart. He did that over and over and over and over again. I don't know how much autonomy he had. He really didn't, right? So not terribly exciting. Mastery. Do I have an opportunity to learn new things, to try new things, to, and this is when you talk about Scotty Scheffler, right? You got both of those in spades. You're a professional golfer, right? Where he golfs, how he trains, who he uses to train, how frequently he goes to the range, what he works on every day. Got a lot of flexibility, right? His tournaments are set, but how he prepares for them, I would say he has a ton. Mastery, that's what he's talking about. I'm a sicko. I love the work. He's trying to master it. His motivation comes from putting work in and trying to be a better golfer every day than he was yesterday. And then the third thing is purpose. What are you working towards? Is there something more? Is there something more than just the victories? What is the purpose that you have? And Scotty talks about family, providing for his family means a lot to him. He talks, it's like a 10-minute press conference. It's worth listening to the whole thing. But he talks about how it means a lot when his wife gives him a kiss in the morning and says, thanks for working so hard for us, that you're, trying to support the family. So Scotty's got all three, right? And it seems like he's got his head on straight, but those three things, Frankie, if you want to be a manager and you want to retain employees, if you have a problem with turnover, you're probably missing one of those three things. You're not giving people enough autonomy. You're not giving them a chance to master new things, to get excited about new things, or you're not giving them purpose, right? And Frank, I was just talking earlier about you and how you were bragging to me about this new way that you were going to split lots and make money in a different way. That's autonomy. You have the freedom to do what you want to do. And on top of that, Frank wants to do this so he can generate more capital and borrow less, so he gets even more autonomy, which will be even more motivating. Mastery. Frank has still not mastered his craft. You've been doing this for 30 years, dude, since college. You still haven't mastered it. You're still finding new and creative ways to skin the cat, to make money in different slices and ways. And then purpose. What am I doing it for? Frank talked about his kids and going on a family trip. He would like to do more of that, have more freedom to do some of that. Frank's purpose is beyond just making money. He has people at home that rely on him, and it feels good to take care of it. So Frank is still highly motivated in running Kava companies today as he was then, because he's getting more and more of the three things that you need in the self-determination theory.
I love it. So can I close?
Yeah.
There's another video that we should do a podcast on. It's Kobe Bryant. And Kobe Bryant talks about everybody else that he plays against in the NBA. And he says most people in the summer go out, go to the club, wake up, get to the gym about noon, practice for 2 hours, go back home, go back for about 4 hours of treatment, and then you go into the gym at about 6. You put in 2 sessions. And he goes, and you go back to the club, you work hard, you put in about 4 hours a day, which is pretty good for the summer. He goes, what I do instead is I skip the club and I wake up at 3 a.m. and I'm at the gym at 4, and I go from 4 to 6. And I don't take 4 hours off, I take 3 hours off. So I'm back at the gym at 9, work for 2 hours till 11. I take 3 hours off. I work till 2 to 5. And then from 2 to 4, I take 3 hours off, and then I go from 7 to 10. Then I get up the next day at 4 o'clock and do it all over again. He goes, good luck catching me over a summer. Like, I love that video. Like, yeah. I don't wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning unless I got a stomach ache. But to that end, like, I love that somebody who is just so incredibly gifted does that much work on top of the gifted. And have you ever seen the movie Boys in the Boat? We were watching that last night. It was on TV. It was like the kids from basically the junior boat from Washington. They go to the Olympics and they beat the Germans and the Italians before World War II. And my wife said to me, she goes, I feel like the margins are smaller now in sports. And they are. Because the margins are smaller because we have more time and there's more people to pay attention to this. But that's the point. Like, there's somebody grinding in everything you do. There's someone who wants to be the best wholesaler in Richmond, Virginia. Like, that's my job for now until I give up that mantle and I want to focus on something else, or I get into something as somebody passes me. Like, there's always somebody chasing, but you've got to have the right carrot stick equation, or you got to get out.
I feel like Kobe is an interesting example that you use there, and that Kobe wanted to win championships, sure, but I feel like he just loved the concept of self-improvement. Like, he looked at himself as a science experiment almost, of just how far can I push this body? You can't work out 4 times a day if you don't love that concept, if you don't love trying to master like, his purpose was far beyond winning, right? And you hear a lot of people that played with him that would say, we'd be showing up at the gym early to try to impress him, and he'd be showering already. Like, he'd already worked out. And this is after winning a championship with the Lakers. And there's a lot of stories with him or Tom Brady or some of the best ever where they would win a game and they'd be back in the film room that night or in the gym that night because they had a bad game. And they looked at it as, we got lucky to win that game. I didn't earn that. Like, they didn't see the win or the loss as the end all be all. They knew that they had more work to do in their process. That's what drove them, that autonomy to train how you want, the mastery of how do I get better. And the purpose is the process. That's the purpose. So I think for anyone listening to this, if you struggle right now with motivation, you're probably missing one of those 3 things. And I would encourage you to go talk to your manager about it. Say, I'd like some, and you got to be a little more specific than that. You don't go to your boss and say, hey, I could use some more autonomy. Be specific. Where would you like it? How would you like to have a little more freedom in decision making? If you are just bored because you've been doing the same job forever and it's not exciting, you feel like you've mastered it, think of a way that you can change positions, do something different. And if you just feel like you can't get any of that from a big company, start a side gig. Test it a little bit. Start doing something on your own in some way, because there's just no worse place to be for me, Frank, and you and I have both been there in companies, than just waking up in the morning and having zero motivation. I have, my last year with NVR and my last year at GE, I was working for paychecks, and boy, it's miserable. Like, when you don't have any of the other 3 things and it's just the money, I can tell you for a fact, it doesn't matter how much the money is, because how much I walked away from. You still feel empty. There's almost no amount of money where you can be happy coming home from work if it's only for money.
I think that's it. So I have these kind of conversations with my dad a lot. And my dad's 72 at this point. And my dad didn't really have a choice. Like, in 3rd grade, he was pulling a wheelbarrow, a little wagon from his house to go wire houses in the neighborhood. So, like, he didn't really have a choice. But he doesn't have the vocabulary. I think for those of us that understand, like, hey, there's something missing and we have a chance to go do it. The thing that was incredibly refreshing about what Scotty Scheffler talked about is he understood that where it lied in his priorities. And not only did he realize where it lied in where it was in the priority stack for him, but he also realized he was really fortunate. And I think that's critical. If you're in a spot where you're fortunate and you're enjoying what you're doing, you should continue to do so. But I've seen so many people go from thankful to entitled. It usually comes down to some part of that process is broken. And it happens a lot more than you wish it did, because you were once really thankful for something and now you take it for granted. And it sounds to me at 29 years old, Scotty Scheffler realized, I'm not ready to take this for granted yet. I'm ready to do the little things that continue to push me along. And that's what I found to be the most encouraging part of that conversation.
I love that, and I love that you still have those chats with the sheriff about it. That's pretty cool. I'll leave you with this story. It's a humorous one. I called my mom yesterday because it would have been their 58th wedding anniversary. My dad passed away 3 years ago, so I always check in on mom on their anniversary day because it's a hard day for her. And I was just asking some questions, just to kind of get her talking and reminiscing. And I asked, what was the song for your first dance? You'd never told me that. And this story's outrageous. She goes, well, I didn't really dance with your dad for our first dance. And I was like, well, what do you mean? She goes, well, the band said, like, let's call up the bride and groom and do this first dance song. And we couldn't find your dad anywhere. And they called him out a few times and sent some people kind of looking around for him, couldn't find him. They even got to a point where they started chanting Barry to get him out, like Barry, Barry. And like the band is doing this. She's like, I'm horrified. Like, where is my husband? What is going on? Like, and the more that the band is chanting, the more horrified I am that you're now drawing attention to the fact that my husband has left his own wedding. Turns out the old man was in the shitter. And he's like, after the fact, my mom's so pissed because finally she grabbed the best man and said, just dance with me. So my mom's first dance was with the best man because they couldn't find my dad, who was taking a dump at his own wedding. But he, like, afterward, he's like, I'm really sorry about that. He's like, I got these suspenders and it's hard for me. I could hear you guys chanting, but there just wasn't anything I could do in the moment. So there's the beauty of a beast story for you right there. Cap off this. I'm not sure it has anything to do with motivation, but I needed to share it somewhere. It's too good.
Oh, it's fucking great.
Frankie, I'm going to let you go ahead and take yourself a nice large dump because I could see it on your face. You're ready. Good talking to you, buddy.
Always a pleasure.
See ya.